Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Angela, and I find my paradise through reading. And this is kind of like my year-end review. Let me just make sure this thing is on. Yeah, this is my first time using the microphone. I figured it would be easier to use the microphone in this video since the camera has to be all the way over here or over there to make room for all these books. These are 91 of the 105 books that I read this year or in the last 12 months. My year ends November 30th. Um, and so I figured it would be cool to just kind of like do a year end wrap up and go through all these books, just show them. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I've talked about them in my other videos, so you can check those out. But I just wanted to, this is just so incredible. It's so fun. And even when I was gathering these books, which I'm telling you was a major chore because I have books everywhere. I mean, I had to go upstairs to my bedroom. I had, because I have a bookshelf in my bedroom, I have a bookshelf in my living room. I have bookshelves in my sitting room. I had books still out in the car. I had to figure out where my other books were. I have some books in my office downtown, so they're not here. I have books lent out. Um, so there's a number of reasons why I don't have all 105 books here, but I will show you what I have. And I'm trying to do them not exactly in the order that they were read, but in roughly the order that they were read because I organize these in the order that I wrote them in my commonplace book. And when I write them in my commonplace book, they're not exactly in the order that I've read them, but they're pretty much in order by month about. But I just went through, trying to put them in about stacks of 10 or what I could. But this was fun. So let me start off this way. I'm just gonna, hmm, yes, I will go through these. Let me use my commonplace book to help, I think, capture, at least I want to mention the ones that I don't have physical copies of. So, and then I'll talk about my favorite books that I selected for each month. Okay. So let's see how this works out because I don't know where I'm going to put them once I uh, mention them. Okay. I'll just slide them around, I guess. Okay. So let's get started. All right. We have Shuna's Journey by Hayao Miyazaki, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. Oh my goodness. Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, which I do not have here. The Arrival by Sean Tan. The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. Heartstopper, Volume 1. Heartstopper, Volume 2. All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by John Sun. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. The Witches by Roald Dahl. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. The Heart of the Fae by Emma Ham. Whew. The Prairie of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Let's put these nicely. Okay. Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. And Heartstopper Volume 3 Okay, then we have, Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Hunter x Hunter, Volume 1. Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. Ashes of Her Love by Pierre Gentil. Hunter x Hunter, Volume 2. Well, let me see, by Yoshihiro Togashi. I'm not going to repeat this that many times, but that's so story and art by Yoshihiro Togashi. Okay. Veins of Magic by Emma Ham. Hunter x Hunter, Volume 3. A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. Oh, some of these books are heavy. I feel like I'm going to work out. A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. Okay. Whew. The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. L'étranger by Albert Camus. A Cinco Pies de Ti by Rachel Lippincott. 5 Feet Apart. This is the 5 Feet Apart in Spanish. Matilda by Roald Dahl. The Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. The Jungle Books by Rudyard Kipling. Hunter x Hunter, Volume 4. Hunter x Hunter, Volume 5. The Way of the House Husband, Volume 1. The Way of the House Husband, Volume 2. I love you, Tatsu. I feel like I'm going down memory lane. Oh goodness, these books brought so much joy this year. So, The Way of the House Husband, Volume 3, and let's see, these are by Kosuke Uno. Okay. Bangs by Sarah Anderson. Let's see, The Way of the House Husband. This is Volume 4. Who? Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. What a great read. That was crazy. All Things Bright and Beautiful by James Herriot. Bride of the Sea by Emma Ham. Hunter x Hunter, Volume 6. Hunter x Hunter, Volume 7. And Homebody by Rupi Kaur. Okay, then I think we go. Okay. I feel like these ones are not in order. Okay. The next one was romantic comedy. I don't have that with me. A Happy Place by Emily Henry. I don't have that with me. Okay, then we have, I knew it. Let me move these over here. Okay. We have The Queen of the Damned by Anne Rice. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. The City of Dreaming Books by Walter Moores. I still love this book. Oh my God. The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. A Hunger Like No Other by Cressley Cole. Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. A Dog Year by John Katz. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. Clara and the Sun by Yasuo Ishiguro. A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. El Regalo, or The Gift, by Danielle Steele. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. The 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Bluebear by Walter Moores. That's heavy. Okay, The Way of the House Husband, Volume 5. Hunter x Hunter, Volume 8. Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. Beach Read by Emily Henry. Okay, The Last Chance Library by Freya Sampson, I'm sorry. Selected Poems of Robert Frost by, obviously, Robert Frost. I'm dropping things. Le Petit Prince, The Little Prince in French. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. The Way of the House Husband, Volume 6. We have Beloved by Toni Morrison. Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I'm probably butchering these names. Graceland by Kristen Cashore. Oh, I'm not gonna lie, my arm's hurting. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. Short Stories in Spanish for Beginners by Ollie Richards. Short Stories in French for Intermediate by Ollie Richards. Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. Paris, the Memoir by Paris Hilton. Man, The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. The Way of the House Husband, Volume 7. The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Let's see, where was I? Okay, Hunter x Hunter, Volume 9. Hay que Ayudarte, Charlie Brown by Charles Schultz. The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert T. Kiyosaki. Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott. Coraline by Neil Gaiman. The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Verity by Colleen Hoover. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Bitten by Kelly Armstrong. Okay, now we're getting into my November books. So I didn't do a video on these yet. This stack over here are the books that I read in November, and that was yeah, that was the last month of my book reading year. So we have, oh goodness, Les, oh God, Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. This guy, jeez, put it down. Ugh. I'm getting a cramp. Okay, The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis. The Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. And The Way of the House Husband, Volume 8. So those are the 105 books that I read during my 2023 reading year. Okay, so I got away from the table and the stacks of books that have been kind of falling all over the place as I was trying to dig through them and pick out the books that I'm going to talk about next. So I am going to talk about quickly the books that I read during the month of November because I didn't do a November wrap up yet. So we're just going to put it all together in this video. Okay, so the first one is C.S. Lewis, Out of the Silent Planet. Okay, this is the first book in a sci-fi trilogy that C.S. Lewis wrote, and I really did enjoy this. I was kind of skeptical, I guess. I wasn't really sure what a C.S. Lewis sci-fi book would be like, but his writing is just incredible. It really is. I love C.S. Lewis so much and the way he just describes things and says things. I mean, I didn't throw my tabs in, but I did highlight a bunch of different things. Maybe I can pick out, this is a lot. So let me see if I can find like a short kind of passage that I might have highlighted to share with you. Let's see what this says. I think I shared that in my last video. I know I did something. I did talk about this in my last video a bit. So let's see what this says. It is just like a harass. Oh, okay. A harass is like this. Okay, first let me give you some background. Right? So this guy ends up getting kind of kidnapped by these two other men. They're kind of like scientists, whatever, who built a spaceship, and they kidnapped this guy and took him to a another planet, which they called Melicandra, and that's actually what we know as Mars. So he goes there, and those two guys that kidnapped him or brought him to basically offer him up as a human sacrifice. They're supposed to bring a, what they think is happening is they're supposed to bring a human sacrifice. So they're like, here, you can have this guy, but he escapes and he ends up connecting with some beings there called the Hras, and they're very lyrical, kind of. They're into like poetry and songs, and they're pretty they're pretty peaceful, and they taught him the language and took him in and showed them a bit of their culture, and he was just kind of living side by side with them as brothers, because he had no way of getting back home, right? And home is the silent planet. That's what they call Earth. So it says here, it is just like a Hras. If you died on the Harandra, they would have made a poem about the gallant human and how the sky grew black and the cold stars shone, and he journeyed on and journeyed on. And they would have put in a fine speech for you to say as you were dying. And all this would seem to them just as good as if they had used a little forethought and saved your life by sending you the easier way around. So So it's this other being that's kind of making fun of the Haras, and that it's probably like more important to them that they would have like a great story and a song and a poem about his journey and the hardship and how he died, instead instead of just like giving him some simple directions, you know. But I did go ahead and I started the second book in this trilogy. So I am actually reading that during the month of December. Okay, then we have The Way of the House Husband, Volume 8 by Kosugi Uno. I've been reading The Way of the House Husband. I started it, I don't know what month, but I started it this year. The manga, okay? And this is about Tatsu. He used to be um, in the gang, in the Japanese gang, and the Yakuza. And so he was like the immortal dragon, whatever, harsh warrior. He left and got married to Miku. I think that's her name, Miku. But anyways, and he's just hilarious. And so the last couple books I kind of felt were being a little repetitive, and it was just like, I wasn't digging it so much. But I was like, let me finish. I'm so close to finishing like this whole series. I think it's only maybe 12 books long. I could be lying, but it's not a lot. And so I was like, I'm not going to stop this far into it. So I got volume 8, and I'm glad I did because it really picked up again. And this just had me in stitches. I thought it was so funny. The only thing, like, I was like, oh, this is like a thicker version or a thicker volume, and it's going to have like more stories, but not exactly, because, and this is why I was kind of like disappointed about this in the end, is, hold on. I think, how far into this? Okay, so about this much of the book really has nothing to do with The Way of the House Husband. Okay, this is this polycure action weird, and polycure is what Miku, his wife, is like obsessed with. Like, she's a polycure fan, and she watches polycure. It's like this little TV show, these female heroes, as you can kind of see, and so she collects little figurines and books and all kinds of stuff. So she's a super fan of polycure, and the yeah, the last big chunk of the book was all about polycure, and I didn't even read it. Like, I read a couple pages of it. I was not into it and didn't finish it. But the Way of the House Husband part was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Okay, then I read The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. And this is kind of like a bucket list book. I really wanted to read this. This is kind of just spearheaded, this sort of like epic fantasy and hobbits and all of that. I mean, this is just, this is it. And did I enjoy it? Yes, ish. I did. At the same time, it was a very slow kind of fantasy. I felt like there was more, maybe 90% of this book was about the journey and walking and mapping out, destinations and figuring out how to get from point A to point B and planning the route and all of that. So that was, I think, the majority of the book. Um, and then there were like a bit, bits and pieces of action and whatnot, but for the most part, it's a journey. So if if you've been living under a rock, this is the first book in the Fellowship of the Ring, or Lord of the Rings, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. There is basically this ring of like ultimate power, and it falls into the hands of this innocent hobbit, uh, Frodo. And so there's this wizard, Gandalf, who's like, hey, we need to get you out of the Shire, which is the most peaceful, beautiful, green, lush little hobbit village. And so Frodo ends up pairing with like a couple of his friends from the Shire, and they just leave the Shire and journey on, not knowing what the heck they need to do with this ring. And then along the way, they add to their group, and their group ends up being, I think, a group of 9 people, which is like the Fellowship of the Ring, and that consisted of, let me see if I remember this right. Is it four hobbits, a wizard, an elf, a dwarf, a human, maybe it was 5 hobbits, would be 9. Because there was, let me see, Frodo, Sam, Mary, Pippin. I don't know, but there's, I think, 9 people in this fellowship that kind of group together and journey, trying to get to destroy this ring. So I'm starting the second book in the trilogy during the month of December. You're going to see a pattern here because basically during the month of December, I'm going to be trying to um, not maybe like not finish, but continue on some of the series that I started. Because I just I have like so many like series and stuff. So that's that. Also during the month of December, in November, I read, no, that was October. I read Bitten. But during the month of December, I'm going to read the second book in that trilogy. Anyways, I digress. Then I had The Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George. I read this and it was okay. It was, I probably wouldn't read this again. This might be on my unhaul. I don't know. But basically, it's this guy, Monsieur Badu, who has this little floating bookshop on the river. Is it on the Seine in Paris? And it's like a kind of like a long, one of those really long houseboats. And he has it docked. It's a bookshop. And then he has this gift of recommending books to people based on anything strange. If you know, maybe there's like a woman whose husband just retired and he's like always underfoot now and she's dealing with that, he'll recommend a book for something like that. But he has this like long lost love and he sets off on a journey in this houseboat and brings in, during his journey, he's bringing other people to join him on this houseboat. I think he was pretty much depressed for like 20 years over this long lost love. And then so this is his way of finding himself, getting out of it, getting over it, and moving on with life and the people that he meets along the way. Which is great. The only thing that I really didn't like about the book is like everything was just kind of, how does he keep coming across these people that are so poetic and so, oh, about love? And it was just really weird. I wasn't vibing with it 100%, but I don't know. That was that. Okay, then we have, what book did I read in November that I do not have with me? I'll think about that. Well, we all know, before I get to one more time. Goodness gracious. Okay, so we all know about Les Miserables. Okay, if you want to read the what, if you want to listen to the audiobook, it is 68 hours long. This book is 1,300 pages long, unabridged, and I will say I loved the story part of the book, the characters and what was going on and how they were all connected and what was going on. It was amazing, amazing story. But I could have done without the other 1,000 pages of French history and battles and politics. And yeah, so there was about 1,000 pages of like background history that really did not do a whole lot for the story, I felt like. So I will never read this again. But I do plan on getting the abridged version of the book, which is a little over 300 pages, so that I can read the book again, yeah, without like all the extra fluff, because those characters, I mean, I still think about these characters. This book was absolutely phenomenal. The story part of it. Les Miserables. And then to try to explain what this book is about, I can't even, you don't want me to. Um, Let me see what I can say about this. There was this guy who was in a, this was like what, 1800s, 1700s, he was in a Paris in a prison in France for basically smashing a shop window and stealing a loaf of bread for his starving, I think, sister-in-law and kids. Um, so he ended up going to jail, and then he was sentenced to like a couple years in prison, and he kept trying to break it out, kept trying to break out, and every time he broke out, they added to his time. So overall, I think he spent like 19 years, either 19, I think 19 years in prison for stealing this loaf of bread and just really suffering extremely under the conditions in the prison. And so he finally gets released. Nobody wants anything to do with him. He's like this hardened criminal or whatever. And so he comes across this. Is he a bishop? I think a French bishop, very um, a very humble man, very a generous man, very just everything about this man was exactly how did he was just so spiritual, so peaceful, so the very face of what you would expect someone in that position to be. Um, but he kind of shows him, Javert, not Javert, oh my goodness, Jean Valjean, that's the convict's name. He shows Jean Valjean um, trust and mercy and forgiveness and love. And that kind of changes him. You know, it just like clicks in his head and he ends up completely changing his life. And, you know, he changes everything, becomes very successful, very generous, and puts everyone first and continues to live humble, even though like he's just super wealthy. But then there's this terrible policeman, Inspector Javert, who is after him. He is trying to find this convict that never showed up where he was supposed to show up after he was released. So he puts him through all kinds of heck, and Jean Valjean starts taking care of this young girl named Cosette. Pretty much saves her from this horrible people. So while he's still kind of running and trying to live his life and raise her and still kind of stay hidden, it was a whole lot. It was a whole lot, and there's like this whole revolution being planned. There's just there's so much you can't even explain what's happening in this story. So, oh, I cried so much. But that is Les Miserables. Okay. Then we have, I am sure there is another book that I read during the month of November. Let me check 1 second. My handy dandy commonplace book. I mean, I'm telling you, what am I without it? No, I think that was it. Way of the House Husband, Little Paris, Out of Time. Okay, so I do have them all here. That's good news. So the last one I read was Fourth Wing, by Rebecca Yarros. And again, if you've been living under a rock, it's like, no, just this book has been absolutely everywhere. And I think because of all the hype and because of how often I see it, I kind of just did not want to go there, I guess, you know. So I ignored it, you know, for a while. But then my colleague at work, she read this in like 2 days, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's the best book I ever read." Blah blah blah. And then she loaned her copy to my other colleague, who read it in like 2 days and was like, "Oh my gosh, it's the best book I ever read." You know. And then they gave it to me, and they're like, "You got to read it." So I did. I read Fourth Wing, and it was really good. It was a lot of fun. It definitely a page turner, very fast paced fantasy. So this is basically following Violet, who is This kind of reminds me of like Hogwarts, along with like Game of Thrones, as well as I don't know. I don't even know. Prairie of the Orange Tree. So there's this kind of school, basically it's like a school for dragon riders, but you really, it's messed up. Basically, most of the people die trying to get into this school or during school, and they're kind of like weeding out the weak people. And then even after they go through so much, and some of them do survive, then you have to try to connect with a dragon, and some people die during that process. And even after you bond with a dragon, you might die falling off the back of your dragon. It's so bad. It's just so bad the way people die and die and die, and you just feel so bad. Um, so basically, there is kind of like a military. You know, you have like the best of the best of the best of the best, who are dragon riders who help protect um, their area, their kingdom, and so Violet, who was kind of studying to be a scribe, you know, she just was very brilliant academically. Her father was a scribe, and basically you're almost like a librarian, you know, you're in charge of like the archives and in charge of the books and protecting them, knowing what's in them, and that's their lifelong endeavor. I mean, it's just all books, and you know so much in different languages, and so that's what she was studying for. Next thing you know, her mother, who's a general and a dragon rider herself, was like, you're gonna try to get into this dragon rider school. And I mean, Violet was just, she was very fragile, always breaking bones, um, not tough at all, because she was studying to be a scribe. And so now she has to do some of the most horrifying things and scariest things and physically challenging things that and she uses a lot of her smarts to help her get through some of these challenges. But so there's like romance, there's dragons, there's magic, there's a little bit of everything in this book. It was a lot of fun, and I am reading book two, which is Iron Flame. So I'm in the process of that. But do I recommend this? Yeah, if you like fantasy, absolutely. I still think the Prairie of the Orange Tree was better. Okay, so now quickly, I am going to tell you the top 12 books by month. So my favorite book I selected each month for 2023, but my year started in December of 2022. So let's start with that one. My favorite book of December was All Creatures, Great and Small by James Herriot. And I do not have that book with me here, but this is the second book of it. So I'll just show this one because it's very similar. Gorgeous. This veterinarian, this is nonfiction, a veterinarian in the Yorkshire Dales, and he just writes about the people in the area, the beautiful farmland around him, the people that he, or the animals that he treats, the farm animals. And a lot of it is so funny. A lot of it is so endearing. This is like the most coziest read I've ever had in my life. And I love him and his writing style so much. Absolutely beautiful. I wonder what, let me just grab one of the tabs. And this is, you know, this isn't the book itself. This is the second one, but let's see. Um, this says, I think old man Alderson would set his dogs on me if I showed up there. I know he doesn't like me hanging around Helen, and on top of that, I've got the feeling he thinks I killed his cow on my last visit. And did you? No, I didn't. But I walked up to a living animal, gave it an injection, and it promptly died. So I can't blame him. So that's just kind of like the stuff. So that was my favorite book of December. My favorite book of January was The Prairie of the Orange Tree. This is dragons, wyvern, magic, assassins, kingdoms, religious differences. Um, oh my God, like love and loyalty, family. There's this. Wow. Definitely, definitely, definitely. For the Orange Tree, 100% recommend. My favorite of January. Okay. My favorite of February was A Day of Fallen Night, Book Two. This is the prequel to A Prairie of the Orange Tree, or The Prairie of the Orange Tree. That's February. March's favorite book was a huge surprise. Came out of nowhere, did not expect it, but that was Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. It was, how many tabs I have here? This was a huge surprise because I had tried to read this book before and it was so dreary and dreadful and depressing and gross and slimy. And I just felt awful reading it. I didn't get too far into it and I put it down and I was like, I don't, ugh, I do not like that book at all. But because this is on the 100 greatest books ever written, I picked it up again. I said, I'm just going to get through it. And this blew me out of the water. This is following a man who he seems to have some mental issues and he ends up killing a pawn shop lady. And this is like everything that he's going through and everything that's going on through his mind and everything after the fact. And people are trying to figure out who did it. And some of it is like guilty conscious. Just there's a lot, so much happening in here. Amazing, amazing book. I will totally read this again. 100% recommend this book. So that was a surprise to me. That was what was that March? This I don't even know what month we're on here now. That was January, February, March. Okay, April, really? Okay, but then we have The City of Dreaming Books by Walter Moores. This book makes me smile so much. It makes me smile so much. This is following this guy. Okay, and that is Optimus Yarn Spinner, and he goes he's trying to figure out who wrote this manuscript that was like the greatest thing he's ever read in his whole life. And he goes to the City of Dreaming Books. It's everything books. It's bookshops, book, you know, very rare books. There's authors, there's publishers, there's anything book related in the city. It just thrives on books and things. So he goes there and is just thrown into this adventure, and it's insane. It is absolutely fun. This book had me laughing. It had me crying. Um, and it is so funny. Like this one, I'm just randomly going to like one part. It says, "We also call this place the Chamber of Marvels, not because there are any marvels to be seen here, but because we can't stop marveling at all the stuff we've amassed." He chuckled. And let me see. Writing is a desperate attempt to extract some dignity and a modicum of money from solitude. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. Some of the things he wrote. Literature is more than just paper, you know. It affects every aspect of existence. It pervades life far more thoroughly than people tend to realize. So it's not even like, okay, so Walter Morris, he illustrated this book as well. So he wrote and illustrated this book. But it's not just like, it's not that it's just like funny and sweet and whatever, but the writing is actually absolutely amazing. His writing is absolutely amazing. Some people can write a bit better than others. They're called authors. Then there are some who can write better than authors. They're called artists. Like seriously, you got to read this book. You have to. Okay. Now next, my favorite book of. Let me get my. You see why I call my commonplace my second brain? Because like it really, literally is my second brain.
Where are we? Okay. The City of Dreaming books. That was my favorite book of May. I'm glad my mom died. That was my favorite book of June. I do not have a copy of it with me, but I'm glad my mom died by Jeanette McCurdy. It is a nonfiction. This is Jeanette McCurdy. She played Sam Puckett, um, Sam's best friend in the Nickelodeon show iCarly. So phenomenal, phenomenal read. She went through so much, and it was just like heartbreaking, and you just learn so much, not just about her, but like about other things like eating disorders and things like that. It's ooh. And the business of um, like acting and singing. There's nope, we're good. So then my favorite book of July was Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. Basically, this is so funny. This book was so funny. Um, so it wasn't just funny, but there was a lot of serious moments in here as well. But basically, a robber bursts after trying to rob a bank unsuccessfully, runs away thinking that the police are after. Right, they're showing up. So this robber busts into an apartment building, sees an apartment door open, runs in there to find out that that apartment was full of people because there was an open house happening. And there was like the real estate agent was showing it to a whole bunch of people all at once. So that's how the story starts. And it kind of goes into all of the different people that are in that open house that are now closed in with this robber. And it turns into kind of like a hostage situation, but this robber is just really dumb, doesn't know what to do, and the people are just making the best of it. They're like ordering pizza and like whatever. They're the worst hostages ever. And then you have the policeman. So there's one policeman and his son. They're both in the police force, and they're both trying to handle the situation, trying to get this robber out, trying to figure out what to do and what's going on. Very endearing book, very emotional, heartfelt, funny, absolutely fun read. 100% recommend. Like all the, I mean, I think I 100% recommend all of these books, being that they were chosen as my favorite books of the month. So, all right, August was a tie. I absolutely could not pick between Paris, the memoir, and Graceling by Kristen Gashore. So these are both, it's a tie for August. I couldn't choose. But Paris, like she ended up, she writes about how she was put into this, uh, is it like a school that they, like a boarding school, and they just like beat the mess out of you, and they think like, like you have problems or whatever. Um, and they do all kinds of like horrifying stuff, and she kept like trying to run away, and she kept getting caught, and it was some bad stuff, and she went through a lot in her life, and I was surprised. I was so surprised. I'm not a big fan of Paris. I don't follow her, but this book was such an eye opener, and it was crazy. I didn't expect anything. I did not expect anything of what this woman went through, and I congratulate her, and I am so inspired by her, and it's crazy. A whole new respect for Paris Hilton. I hope all my books don't fall over. They are teetering precariously here. And then Grayson. All right, so we're following Katza, who is I think she is the niece of the king, maybe. And in this, basically, people are given a grace, and they're not given a grace. How do I explain this? Some people are born with a grace. And so you don't know which children have a grace until they reach a certain age, and then both of their eyes will be two different colors. Okay, so that's the first indication that this child has some kind of a grace. And a grace is a very high skill that's beyond, uh, it's the best of the best, kind of almost inhuman skill in something. So once a child has two different eyes, they are taken to the king and they are kept in the palace until their grace manifests itself and they figure out what that child's grace is. And then the king can decide if it's a grace that he finds will be helpful for him in his kingdom or in his palace. And he'll either keep that child um, to serve him in the kingdom, or if it's a grace that he finds is not helpful, he lets them go back to their family and to do whatever. So some graces, like there's a grace of baking. All right. So this person can bake the best things anyone's ever tasted in all of history and whatever. So that's his grace. And the king's like, yeah, I'll take that. Like you can, I'll keep this person in my kitchen and baking, or, people that have cooking grace. Some people have a grace where they can read minds. The king's like, heck yeah, I need that kind of intelligence. So he'll keep that person. So his niece, Katza, had a grace of killing. He was like, all right, I need an assassin, or whatever. So he kind of kept her and had her working for him as his thug. He would send Katza out to torture people, or to kill people, um, like assassinate, execute. She was the executioner. Just anytime she showed up, people freaked the heck out because they knew how deadly this woman was. Um, and so it's just kind of her trying to decide, like, hey, am I what my grace says I am? Am I just a cold blooded killer? Because she's just like, she starts feeling like something's wrong. This just isn't right. And she's just not liking some of the things that she's doing. Um, so this is her journey, and it's a lot of fun. This book was absolutely fantastic, and it was a tie between this and Paris. Okay. Now, my favorite book of September is The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. And this is um, fiction. This guy, even though like I kind of felt like it had that nonfiction vibe, it just felt like so possible. So this guy is aspiring to be a race car driver. He has this dog. Um, oh my God, the dog. What's his name? I loved him so much. But this says a heart wrenching but deeply funny and ultimately uplifting story of family, love, loyalty, and hope. A captivating book at the wonders and absurdities of human life, as only a dog could tell it. So, this book was from the viewpoint of his dog. And it was so well. I'm telling you, it does. Okay, I know what I said, and it sounds crazy that it does have some nonfiction vibes, even though this was from the viewpoint of the dog. But I'm not the only one that thought this, because when I Googled it, like other people were trying to figure out if this was based on a true story. um, and so basically, this is the dog of the guy who's aspiring to be a race car driver. That's his lifelong dream. He ends up getting married and having a daughter. And so this is the dog just being by his side and being a part of the family, and then the struggles, and then the guy's wife gets sick with cancer, and there's things with involving the child and his race car career. There's so much going on, and it's so beautifully written, and it just really tears at your heart, and it really hones in on kind of like humanity and what it means to be human. What your soul, what your feelings, what your senses are telling you. Just there's so much about how this dog is more human than some humans, I guess. And I just bawled my eyes out so much. uh I think he wrote another book. Okay, he did read, or he did write another book or a couple books, I don't know, but I'm going to look into it because I loved his writing style. And oh God, I just this book was everything. This was so this it makes me smile and it makes me laugh, and I never expected this from this book. I never ever expected this book. What was going on in this book? Oh my God, that was so good. Okay, my favorite book of October was actually a reread, and that was Bitten by Kelly Armstrong. And my daughter actually has that book. She's borrowing it, which I need to get it back from her because I have the omnibus version. And so during the month of December, I want to read the second book of Bitten, from that trilogy. Because as I said, during December, I want to keep on with some of these trilogies or series. But that was basically this woman. She is the last female werewolf in existence. She's the only female werewolf in existence. um, she left her pack, tried to have a normal life, got a fiance, got an apartment, got a career. When something happens, there's an emergency in the pack, they send for her. She goes back and she's like, I don't want nothing to do with this. This werewolf stuff is crazy. And they're like, well, look, whatever, you need to help us in this situation. Once this is taken care of, you can go back to your regular human life, whatever. Um, and so it's very adventurous. There's a lot going on, serial killers and whatnot. What I loved the most about this book, for a werewolf book, it wasn't depicting werewolves as these big, ugly, half human, half wolf monsters that have no control over themselves and whatever. It is them being just really big. They turn into really big wolves, and it really talks about like their senses and what they're thinking, what they're feeling with their fur, their noses, what they're smelling, um, what it feels like to run, and what their instincts are telling them. And it's and the community and the pack, how they operate together as a pack, and what their bonds are like. It's so fun, and it's just so, and there's like some spicy love in this book. There's a lot, and that was a reread for a reason. Now, Fourth Wing is my favorite book for the month of November, which was my last reading month for my year. And Fourth Wing, I think, and yeah, I pretty much already talked about this. This academy, dragon riders, magic, abilities, um, kingdoms, and secrets, and um, yeah. So, so that was my favorite book for the month of December, or the month of November. Now, my all-time favorite read for my reading year, my if I had to pick one book, just one book, just one, that's my absolute favorite for the year. Can you guess what it is? Okay. If you guessed The City of Dreaming Books, you are 100% absolutely correct. It is The City of Dreaming Books by Walter Morris that sits with me so heavily, is so special to me, and I love so much, and had the hugest impact, and the biggest surprise, and everything. This is my number one favorite book of 2023. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's even crazy that I can pick one absolute favorite book. Um, yes, it would be this one. Coming up to a close second, um, yeah, if I had to pick a second favorite book, it would be The Prairie of the Orange Tree. And third favorite is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. So there you have it. That is it. Those are all of my favorite books of 2023. If you're interested in hearing more about any of the books that I mentioned, especially of the 105 books that I read, you'll find some of my thoughts and um, impressions of those books in my other videos. So until then, bye.